Today we are diving into one of the most troubling chapters in American medical history, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. This is a study that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about racism, ethics, and the responsibility of science to serve humanity, not exploit it. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service conducted a study in Tuskegee, Alabama, to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis. The participants were 600 African American men, 399 of whom had syphilis and 201 who did not. These men were promised free medical care, meals, and burial insurance, but they were never informed of their diagnosis or treated for their condition, even after penicillin became widely available as a cure in the 1940s. For 40 years, these men were misled, manipulated, and abandoned by the very institutions meant to protect their health. Many suffered severe physical consequences, passed the disease to their spouses, and in some cases to their children. The Tuskegee experiments weren't just a failure of medical ethics. They were a horrifying abuse of trust and a stark example of systematic racism in American healthcare. The fallout from this study continues to shape how many communities, particularly African Americans, view the medical establishment to this day. In this video, we're going to explore the details of the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, discuss its impact, and look at how this dark chapter changed the rules of medical ethics forever. We'll also examine why it's so important to remember this history and ensure it's never repeated. This isn't an easy topic to discuss, but it's a necessary one. So let's take a closer look at the Tuskegee experiments and reflect on the lessons we must learn from this tragic and painful history.
What the United States government did was shameful, and I am sorry.
We have no idea how many wives, girlfriends, children inherited the disease and also died or were forever crippled by its effects.
And the study might have continued if not for a 1972 article from Associated Press reporter Jean Heller.
Everyone who knew about this, to my way of thinking, everyone who knew about this and didn't blow the whistle, that didn't shout to high heaven, "This is wrong," is culpable. Medical doctors deliberately let them die, wanted them to die for what they could discover from their bodies later.
How old were you when you first learned about the Tuskegee study?
23.
The day you published this story, the day the story was published, did you know what was getting ready to happen?
Yeah. I knew it would be explosive. After the story broke, and there was this incredible public outcry, Senator Kennedy had held very, very public congressional hearings on this.
If they had been white, your public health service would never have agreed to do this study in the first place. They wouldn't have dared.
The study and the aftermath are well documented in films and books, but there are still things we might never know, and for Heller, that goes back to the very beginning.
I still have not heard the answer to the very simple question of why. They should have been able to determine after the first 3 or 4 autopsies that the inside of a black person ravaged by syphilis looks identical to the insides of a white person, and stop the study.
Beyond that, Heller believes there's no way to know just how many people were directly or adjacently affected by the study or its disclosure. Survivors, victims of the study, and their families did win a $10 million settlement from the US government, and the study's disclosure led to modern medical ethics procedures. But Heller says more than 40 years later, there's still at least one lesson to be learned from the Tuskegee Syphilis Study.
Those of us who recognize that this country has got so far to go, never quit fighting.
Here was a program they said was helping the people, on it, if they joined that, they could, get some results out of it. Some medical care, something like that. And then, I was real young then. I don't guess I might have been 20 years old then. I never could understand what it was all about. No more than she said it was a nice program, like colored people, when something come around, think you're gonna help them, a lot of them would jump into it. But we were young, I didn't know what it was all about. So, me and my brother both.
The men in the study received baseline blood workups, physical exams, and at one point, a spinal tap to determine neurological damage. They were told that the spinal tap was a necessary treatment. In truth, it was not only unnecessary, but also painful and dangerous.
That was pretty bad, that spinal tap. Of course, I did along pretty good with it, but, I stayed in the bed a week or two.
By the 1950s, penicillin had become widely accepted as an effective remedy for syphilis. Alabama law mandated penicillin treatment for those infected. However, doctors did not permit the Tuskegee participants to have the new medicine. In their zeal to continue to collect scientific data about the disease, public health physicians withheld treatment from the men. Aggressive efforts were made to discourage the men from joining the military, where inductees were routinely screened and treated for syphilis. Additionally, when some of the men moved away from Tuskegee, the Public Health Service made sure they would not receive treatment. The names of the men were circulated to clinics and health facilities in the cities where they moved, and doctors there were instructed to not administer penicillin. When George Key moved to California and later to Massachusetts, he found that doctors in both places kept track of him. And soon after relocating to Ohio, Ernest Hendon was contacted by a government doctor.
After I went to Cleveland, they still kept in contact with me. Sometime one white man used to come up there and see me about once a year.
So you were there and the president apologized?
Yes, that's the best thing. Because I was shaking his hand when I went to shake his hand. I told him, I said, thank you for apologizing, for talking like you did. And I said, now we won't forget it. Yes, sir. So did.
To Fannie Mitchell, her husband Gary was much more than one of the 600 men in a medical study. When he died in 1966, she lost a man who was a loving husband to her and a generous father to her children. She remembers him fondly.
He's tall and slim, and he just was all right man, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, and hard-working. Well, he couldn't get one job, he'd get another, and he was a good provider for the straight around to take care of his family as best he could.
1932 to 1972, the Tuskegee Syphilis Study, and the study was basically 400 black illiterate guys in rural Alabama with syphilis were actively denied treatment for 40 years of follow-up. At the 25-year point of the study, the Surgeon General of the United States signed a certificate. They all got a signed certificate and $25, 1 year for every year of participation in the study. 400 guys for 40 years engaged in how many acts of intercourse and fathered how many children with congenital syphilis, none of which could be identified or treated? I mean, it's literally Nazi death camp level ethical violations.